Afternoon, everyone. I'm Nestor Licanto. Welcome back to the PDN's Election 2024 continuing election coverage. I'm joined by the chairman of the Guam Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Ernie Galito, and the vice chairman, Mr. Tae Oh. And they're here to talk a little bit about what the business community thinks the 38th Guam legislature, whoever gets in, should be focused on. Ernie?
Well, one of the things we're looking for candidates and incumbents who are interested in two things that the Chamber is very keen on, and that is creating a healthy business environment. And second thing is to get a better efficiencies out of the government of Guam. And two aren't necessarily non-exclusive. They actually go hand in hand. And so starting with government, if we're able to get a better efficiency out of the government, such as things like government procurement, which has always been kind of like a roadblock for a lot of things. The second thing would be probably the permitting process. And that's always been an arduous task for not only for outside investors, but also for people who are already residents here. And for things as simple as trying to get your house remodeled, or if you're going to add an extension to a business, or you want to invest in a new property in a greenfield situation, it's so tedious and arduous, like I mentioned, to try to get all the permitting done in a timely manner where you can kind of forecast where you're going to be as far as construction cost. When does the bridge loan between your construction cost and your mortgage takes over? So these are a lot of simple things that sound easy to fix on paper, but to try to put it to actual practice is kind of hard to do. And there's been a lot of attempts in order to kind of streamline it, but there seems to be either some inconsistencies with some of the laws and regulations or how they are interpreted.
Yeah, we'll dive a little bit deeper into that in a little bit, but I wanted to, you did take a pretty comprehensive analysis of Guam's affordable housing problem. Yes, could you kind of summarize what you wrote down?
Yeah, quickly, I think it was a two-part op-ed. The first was pretty much, it was an overall view of what Guam's conditions are right now when it comes to affordable housing and why we have this crisis. One of it mainly because of construction costs. Another, it was a discussion about how some of that might be able to be alleviated through some public policies. The second part was more detailed on what Guam can adopt when it comes to what our neighbors have been doing in order to bring affordable housing to the mass. So there's a lot of intricate details in it, and there are certain things that we can do here on the island, and some that maybe we should not adopt. So it's something that I've proposed. Of course, it's up to the leaders to kind of move forward with it.
If you were to boil it down to maybe a couple of things that can be done and can be done quickly to help ease the situation, what would that be?
The first one I think would be the ADU. It's called the Additional Dwelling Unit. Mm-hmm. Pretty much, I actually had a discussion about this today, and it's basically it allows for R1 lots to have additional dwelling unit. Like, for example, before we used to call it the mother-in-law unit, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we could have additional dwelling units, so it can be a multi-generational family living in the same lot, then it could really bring down the cost of housing for our younger generation. Imagine mom, dad owns a lot. They want to build a small unit, of course, a smaller size unit that could meet all the codes. That is going to cost a lot less, number one, because there is no land acquisition cost, right? So if that is allowed, then we could probably have our younger generation stay there, or even turn around and rent it to family members at a much lower cost. You look at the housing market right now, there's a bunch of inventory that is going at $2,200, $2,400. There's a whole vacuum of units that are available at around $1,000 or $1,600. There's nothing. There's barely anything. So if we could have additional dwelling units within R1 lots, that could really help out the next generation, or or relieve some of the pressure when it comes to the high rent prices that we have.
Sure, and I think Senator Cristoenius had a bill passed with that in mind.
Correct.
the ADU.
And I believe it's right now stuck in committee. And we don't know how long that's going to take, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Ernie, other than the housing crisis, I would say, that we have right now, you mentioned bureaucratic red tape. Dive deeper into that.
So how do we get our government to be more efficient? And a couple of things they can do, for example, they can do a lot more outsourcing as opposed to doing things in-house, because thereby they'll have a higher cost of providing the services, because there's a higher payroll, there's more weighted costs for employee costs, as opposed to trying to farm it out and getting the best bidder to provide the services. It's not necessarily the low bidder wins all or the cheapest is the best, but providing have the best qualified provider in order to do the work. And so the other thing would be, if we can get through permitting, we get through procurement, how we can make things better efficient. I think overall, we wanted to make Guam have a better, healthy environment to do business.
Yeah. There was also a common complaint by the business community about long-term leases with the government of Guam. 5 years is not.
No one's going to invest for 5 years.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as, it's basically just a rent. It's not necessarily a long-term lease, because things, in order to be amortized, it has to be at least 25 years, even longer, 50 years would be better amortization schedule. For example, if you wanted to build a hotel property or a resort or some other major attraction, it's going to take a longer payback period. Even solar panels is going to be a 20-year payback period. 20-year life. Hopefully you get a payback period within 5 years. But that's just a typical example, is some of the handicaps that we face. We're trying to attract business or reinvigorate people who are in business here already.
Yeah. Tae, you want to dive in on that one?
Yeah, sure. When you have a large company that's willing to invest millions of dollars, and we always go out and seek investors, but when they come here, we slap them with inconsistencies that are not exactly in line with what we ask them to come here and invest for, right? So, and companies are not going to invest millions and millions of dollars at a 5-year lease. Even banks will not be able to, leverage any of this. So, unfortunately, I know there are some concerns about, especially when it comes to government land and its use, but I think we do need to vet candidates, and we also need to make sure that these investors are in it for the long run.
Let's turn to what have traditionally been the two pillars of our economy, tourism and military federal spending. You were formerly with the GVB at one point, and I know you've been involved in the tourism industry. Talk to me about those industries in particular, Ernie, tourism and military spending.
Well, as we talked about long-term leases, we need to have a better destination development plan, so that we can have major investors to provide hotels, attractions, even airplane space over at the airport. We need to be able to attract investors on the long term, and that's the only way we can really develop the island destination. We have to improve our product. Burdon Pinko, the father of tourism, used to say, we want to shine up, clean up, and spruce up. And that's just at the surface, but we have to dig deeper, because Guam has been known as a very convenient, close destination, but it hasn't really been known for its unique experience. And we're doing it now with GVB, with cultural experiences, our uniqueness, our history, our heritage, our culture. But we need to have more, because they can get uniqueness other places. So we may have to be able to say, if we're not going to be able to low-cost destination, we want to be the best experiential destination.
Yeah. You want to weigh in on tourism there, Dave?
Yeah, historically, Guam's been a very budget-friendly place. You had large tour groups that used to come around here, and that used to be a time when the dollar was definitely weaker. There are macroeconomics elements that are at play here. Our dollar value has gone up dramatically versus the yen and the Korean won. On top of that, our inflation has hit them, so it's a double whammy for some of these tourists. So now you're talking about like double the cost of what it would normally cost for these tourists to come before the pandemic. That's a major issue, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's nothing we can do about it. There's definitely, as Chairman mentioned, you know, airline incentive. There's different ways we could promote it. Maybe it's time we graduate from a budget destination. Maybe we want to emphasize that Guam is more of a higher end destination. But of course, we need to make sure the infrastructure is there. We need to make sure the service is there. We need to ensure that, you know, the facilities are there to support that. There are folks that are willing to pay the price. Are we there yet? Are we at a point to accept those type of tourists?
Yeah. So right now, you know, military spending, as a lot of people are saying, is where would we be without the military federal spending? Where would we be, Ernie? And are there are benefits, obviously, but there are also bad, negative things with the military buildup?
Well, I think the negative things is that what Tae had alluded to earlier was that it's going to put pressure on rental properties because the military will have a subsidy in order for overseas duty station in order for them to attract housing outside the base. So that puts pressure on the market here where local residents cannot afford the same thing that military people can afford. So we're looking at something like that that's probably going to be on the negative side. On the positive side, it does bring in people into the economy and their consumers. And also, not only is the military themselves as their dependents, but also all the support group. It's tied to the military or the contracting services that are also have to do with either construction or services or the types of facilities management that will associated with having military bases here on Guam being enhanced and enlarged.
So Tae, is the military buildup here, is it generally more positive or?
I would say it's a definite positive. Currently right now, without our military counterparts, I don't think Guam's economy would be in the same shape it is. Look at our neighbors. Saipan is struggling. They're asking the feds to come back. That's a great example of how important it is for Guam to diversify. Without the military, we wouldn't have all these $1 million contracts and all these buildup happening, and that also brings in great jobs for our local folks. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean we're only going to have positive. There's always going to be some type of negative effect. I know housing was brought up when it comes to the rental rate, but at the same time, I also firmly believe that the military can do something about it. The military can build outside the fence if they want to, and I think they should be encouraged to, because apparently right now it costs around $900 per square foot to build inside the fence. So I think there is something that we as a local population and a local economy can do to have a symbiotic relationship with our federal counterparts, and there are problems that we could solve for them. It's just we need to be able to sit on the same table and try to hash out the issues here.
Yeah, let's talk about the candidates, and I guess the most compelling race to most people is the congressional race. Is either one or both of them good for business, quote unquote, Ernie?
Well, I think both candidates in their platform explanation, they seem to be very pro-business as far as things like job creation, quality of jobs, working with the military for enhancements for our environment and as well as the infrastructure. So both seem to have a very positive aspect. Not only will they work with their colleagues in the legislature, but also they would work well with the administration side of it, most notably the White House administration, the different department agencies, Department of Commerce, Department of State, as well as the Pentagon. So they seem to let us know that there are some shortcuts in order to get through some positive energy and some results working with federal government on their side of the fence.
Yeah. Based on what you've heard from their campaigns. What would you say? Are they pro-business? Is one more pro-business than the other?
I think we have two very great candidates on our slate. They seem to be very pro-business, both of them. And I like the fact that both of them are kind of thinking outside the box as to how to help Guam. I appreciate the fact that they are trying to look at other avenues to diversify the economy, and to look for source funding for those, and to seek out those source funding with the feds. I think whichever candidate it is, I think is going to look bright for Guam.
Yeah. Speaking of diversification, that was going to be my final question. How should the incoming 38th Guam legislature, what should they focus on in terms of economic diversification? What sort of industry should they be pushing once they get into office?
Well, you mentioned about the limitation of 5-year leases. One of the things that both candidates have mentioned about, because Guam is a strategic landing point for trans-Pacific fiber optic cables, we could be developing data centers as well as AI type of industries here. And so in order to have those types of businesses be sustainable, you have to have reliable power, you have to have land, you have to be able to an educated, competent workforce. So in those matters there, we can keep people from leaving Guam and seeking employment or housing elsewhere. And then second thing, we can grow the job and the quality of jobs that creates a better tax base, as well as consumerism, the velocity of consumers in the economy, and then also give some permanence as far as what to look forward to, because the digital world is here, and so we needed to protect that. That's one of the benefits of having the military here. It's not only protecting against deterrence against any rogue nations, but it also protects the passageways, the sea channels, as well as the data fiber channels to protect those things against any type of aggression.
All right, take a couple of minutes left. What's your thoughts on economic diversification and what the 38th Guam legislature focuses attention on?
Sure. Actually, this was a question that was posed to me today. What a lot of people don't understand is that more than anything, when there's a crisis, there's also a great opportunity. Housing, construction can be our third industry. And that's where I'm seeking support. I firmly believe that if there is enough demand out there for housing, that could create a whole construction industry. Right now, we already have a construction industry that's already building our bases. But at the same time, if we could shift all those staff, if we could shift all those skills and talents into our local market, then I think that's where our third economy is going to be. Every major economy with a strong foundation always has construction as one of their founding industries, and I want to build that, and I think Guam can build it.
And is there anything that the incoming legislature can do to help facilitate that?
I think there has to be the will. There has to be the will. And more than the legislature, I think the administration needs to really have the will to push forward and make this a reality.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Ernie Galito, chairman of the Guam Chamber of Commerce, and Tae Oh is the vice chairman. I'm Nestor Licanto. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next hour with more of the PDN's coverage of Election 2024.